everybody. Welcome to another edition of the 1Mby1M podcast. I'm here today with Taylor Greene of Collaborative Fund. Well, welcome to the show, Taylor.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start by introducing our audience to you and to Collaborative Fund. Tell us about the fund. What is the fund size? What size checks do you like to write? What stage do you like to work in? Let's get to know one another.
Sounds great. Yeah, just to give you a little bit of information about Collaborative. Collaborative was founded in 2010 by my partner, Craig Shapiro. Started off as an $8 million fund that was largely a continuation of Craig's angel investing, where we were writing smaller checks into early stage companies. And then you fast forward to 2019, we are investing out of our fourth fund. It's a $100 million fund where we now mostly lead early stage investments. They tend to be mostly seed rounds focused on consumer-facing companies that are at the center of two things that we're really interested in, one being for-profit. We are a venture capital firm. We have institutional investors who measure us on our returns. But it's important for us to also invest in founders and companies that also do some good for the world. So we invest at the center of that for-profit and for good, and that's where we think the world is moving, and that's where we think the opportunity is in entrepreneurs and companies that are really aligning their values with the companies that they built.
So impact investors.
Well, we're not impact investors because I think impact investors are measured on their ability to invest in companies that are more on the for good side. Our companies are for-profit businesses first and foremost, but they happen to have mission-driven entrepreneurs. They happen to have mission-driven entrepreneurs and missions that we believe are good for the world. But we actually think that because they have that mission alignment, it actually gives the company a better chance of success.
Okay, fair enough. Good distinction that you underscore. So when you say seed, can you help define seed for us? The venture ecosystem has changed tremendously in the time that you have been in business. I'm sure you've been in business as entrepreneurs probably before that. I've been in the Silicon Valley venture ecosystem for, good 20 plus years. So there used to be seed and then Series A, but now it's pre-seed, seed, post-seed, pre-Series A, small Series A, large Series A, traditional Series A, blah, blah, blah. So where in that continuum do you play?
Yeah, it's a great point. So I've been investing full-time for about the last 6 years. And so I've seen a little bit of this movement during that time, the whole pre-seed industry has come on the scene.
Yeah.
But I think seed is we're really investing in an early stage company. Sometimes it's called a Series A, sometimes it's called a seed round, and other times it's called a pre-seed. We are okay if it's we're the first check into the company. It's okay with us if the company is already raised from some angel investors. But usually a seed round is a $2 to $3 million round. We typically invest into, we typically take up about half of that round with our initial check, and then we syndicate the rest of it. But I think the major shift over the last 6 years since I've been doing this full time is really just kind of in the nomenclature. I think pre-seed is really akin to 10 years ago what would have been called a seed round or an angel round. Typically that's between $750,000 and $1 million. 10 years ago when I was raising money for my last company, our Series A was $4 million. Today, that would probably be called a seed round. And then today, you're seeing a lot of seed extensions, which tend to be a $5 million round. That would have been more of a Series A 10 years ago. So I think when you actually look at the size of the rounds and the succession of rounds being raised, I think it's very similar in terms of the amount of capital. It usually starts with $1 million, then it's often followed with $3 million, then $5 million, then $10 million. I just think the names are different now.
No, I don't agree with what you described here. I mean, we've done more than 300 of these interviews, and people are writing $50,000 checks, $100,000 checks in the pre-seed bucket, and there are funds that do that. So I think the description that you gave, I think, excludes that class of investors, but that class exists, and some of them are very small funds, 20, 30 million funds that are doing exclusively pre-seed, seed, maybe some post-seed. And I just talked to someone this morning. They're doing, seed and very small Series A, maybe pre-Series A. And the other trend in that segment is that some of these people would exit in Series C, Series D if the financing goes that far. So that's kind of understandable because, this takes a long time, right? And for these smaller funds, it's not possible to do pro rata. If there's a $100 million round, they can't really do pro rata with their fund sizes. So the business is changing somewhat.
Yeah, I was looking at it more from the entrepreneur's perspective in terms of, from a dilution perspective. I still think that the round, the amount being raised is about the same. I think the nomenclature is different, but I think you're right. If you look at the makeup of the entities in those rounds, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have seen an institution investing into an angel round. You would have seen individual angels.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So,
and that has institutionalized now.
Yeah, I think that has changed. I think you do see the $50K checks here and there. I think a lot of times it may look like an angel, but it's actually an angel who's a scout for one of the larger funds. So you kind of have to dig into the details. But I think the market's gotten more competitive, especially at the later stages, that funds are looking to get an edge by, or at least more deal flow by investing, into earlier rounds. I think the one change is that, or one of the most prominent changes is that you do see funds popping up that do focus on quote unquote pre-seed, and they're going into angel rounds, whereas previously you wouldn't have seen a fund taking up half of an angel round before. It would have been mostly individuals. So I see it as more of a good thing for entrepreneurs. There's a lot of capital out there. I don't see it as a terrible thing for VCs. I think more companies getting started and more access to capital is by and large a good thing for the market. It's just our job to properly identify those companies early and convince them that we're the right partner.
You're the right partner
it's still
for them.
It's still the same job for me. I think it's just that there are a few more institutions coming in earlier.
So tell me about the kinds of B2C ventures you like to invest in, and how would you characterize, besides the ventures having a good element, doing good element, is there other parameterization that you could put on your preferred investments?
Yeah, I would say, I try to simplify it as much as possible. I think it's my job to find outstanding entrepreneurs with breakthrough ideas who are solving big problems in markets that are either big already or can grow into something huge. And so I'm always looking for that. So we do start very broad, but we have a handful of focus areas. One area that's really exciting to us is digital health and healthcare. We think this is an area that's ripe for disruption, especially here in the U.S. We also spend a lot of time on what we call the money category, which is effectively fintech. So we're looking for mobile-first businesses that either offer more transparency to users or more access to users or democratizing an industry. That's a really exciting category to us. We also do invest in some direct-to-consumer brands. Those tend to be mostly in the food space. One area that we're really excited about is sort of how people are thinking about their diets and health and wellness, and a lot of that is coming back to some interesting things we're seeing in food. So it could be an environmental component with meat that's grown from cells, or so that you don't have to actually grow an animal, which has an impact on the environment, or it has to do with plant-based diets, which people are flocking to because of certain health benefits. And so those are kind of the main categories that we are focused on at the moment. And I think there's plenty of really interesting companies that fall into those buckets to keep us busy.
Great. Now, what about geography?
Yeah, so we're based here in New York, so we focus a lot of our investing here, but we also have an office on the West Coast in San Francisco. But just given our network and our deal flow, most of our investing tends to be in New York, San Francisco, and then we also see a lot of deals and invest a lot in Los Angeles, but also more recently in Boston.
Okay. And since you do consumer businesses mainly, and you do seed, what do you like to see by way of validation, or how do you decide what stage qualifies as seed for you? Because again, we are seeing all kinds of different definitions of what is an acceptable seed situation for a fund.
Yeah, so we tend to define seed as typically an investment that's valued below a $15 million valuation. So that allows us to invest really early in, I guess, what's now called pre-seed. To us, it's kind of all the same, but we can come in early if we have a thesis around a space and we really think it's the right team, et cetera. We have no problem writing a smaller check into a very early stage company at a lower valuation.
So you would invest in a concept stage venture?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Especially if we have a thesis on the space. So I would say half of the time our investments are driven by pre-existing theses that we have within the firm. And then other times it's more opportunistic, where it's an idea that we hadn't even really thought of before, and we do our work and we are able to validate it either with our own knowledge or by our due diligence. And we'll invest in those companies as well, even if they have a fair amount of traction. And so we have flexibility for that reason in terms of the valuation that we come into, because we like to come early into companies that we're really excited about and have a pre-existing thesis, but we're also can go a little bit later if for whatever reason we needed more data to validate that thesis.
Mm-hmm. So you would, in the investment, in the thesis-driven situations, you are looking for a team that can execute on that thesis, and in the opportunistic cases, they come to you with the ideas, and if you like them and if they fit your worldview, you would accept that as an investment. So let's do some examples. Talk about a couple of ventures that you have invested in, and also just to give us a feel for how you think about these companies. Talk us through what stage did they come to you in, and what is it about them that captured your attention?
Yeah, so one recent investment that we just announced is a business called STEP, S-T-E-P, which is a bank for kids. So it's a mobile-first bank that focuses on teens and kids. And we spent a lot of time analyzing the market and trying to understand which areas were either still largely cash-based economies, had not yet moved into a mobile-first digital bank. There's been a lot of activity in that space, addressing different populations. We felt that there was an opportunity in kids. We met an entrepreneur. It's actually an entrepreneur that I've known for a long time. I've backed his last company. It's a guy named CJ McDonald, who's the founder of Step. He came to us with the idea. We already had a feeling that that was a real opportunity, an underserved population. And so we decided to make the investment based on that pre-existing thesis. And it was very early. He really just had an idea.
How do you define kids in this case? What is the age group?
Well, it's mostly focused on teenagers. So right now, at least in the U.S., if a teenager needs money to go to the movies or buy something, it's largely cash-based. So you get cash from their parents and then go out and make the transaction. If they want to save up for something, it's largely them saving their own cash, not opening a bank account. But there's no reason to us why they can't open a bank account. They're largely on their mobile phones already. Some of them are using apps like Venmo to transfer money, but they haven't yet opened their own bank account and don't have a product out there that's tailored directly to them. So it's largely.
And does the company work with other banks, or is it a bank in its own right?
The company is a bank in its own right, but they have a debit card that they use one of the more popular issuers to manage the card. But they are their own bank.
Great. All right. I get a sense. And let's do maybe another example, and then we'll switch to other ideas.
Sure. Another example of a company that we recently invested in is a company called 4 Days. It's FORDAYS. This is actually in the apparel category. So we invested in 4 Days because we got really excited by the idea of something called a closed-loop manufacturing process. So one thing we didn't realize, and this kind of fits into the opportunistic category because we hadn't really wrapped our brains around this problem before the entrepreneur walked through our doors, was that the average person throws away 80 pounds of clothing every year. And a lot of the clothing, given what it's made of these days, ends up in a landfill.
Yeah.
And apparel, when you look into it, apparel is actually one of the largest sources of items in landfills. And that was the problem that the entrepreneur was looking to solve. And so she's solving it in a way that you buy a T-shirt, for example, from the company. Once you're done with the T-shirt, once it loses its shape, gets stained, whatever, you decide you don't want it anymore, you mail it back to the company. They then recycle the material into a new T-shirt and mail it back to you. So it all stays within their closed loop. And it's a way of doing e-commerce with zero waste, which was just a really exciting value proposition to us because we think there are a lot of consumers out there who care about the climate and care about sustainability and would rather pay a little bit more for a T-shirt that provides creates zero waste to the world. And so it was an opportunity that we jumped on when we saw the deal.
Very interesting. That's a really, really cool one. Indeed, there is a tremendous amount of wastage in the fashion industry and clothing industry. Yeah. Okay.
Couldn't agree more.
So the next question I have for you is a slightly broader question, which is, are you looking for unicorns?
Well, I think the short answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always looking for unicorns because when you look at historically, when you look at the math of venture capital, you need a unicorn in a fund in order to be a top performing fund. And so the good news is we put about 35 companies into a fund. Not every company needs to be a unicorn, but we are looking for one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the short answer is we are looking for unicorns, and they're critical to the success of our model. But the good news is we get plenty of opportunities to find that unicorn within a given fund. So it's not an impossible task.
Okay. So I'll just comment a little bit on what you said. In the B2C space, I think the VC model works better perhaps with unicorn as a goal. The B2B side of venture capital is quite different. You can make a lot of money with smaller funds that have smaller exits with capital efficient ventures, because the vast majority of B2B exits happen in the $50 to $60 million space. All the strategics acquire companies all the time in the sub $50 million exit price. And for that to work for you, you need to build these companies in a very capital efficient manner, but you could still be making a lot of money. As a result, there's a lot of funds out there right now that are these smaller funds, $30, $40, $50 million funds, $70, $80 million funds that are looking at that opportunity and that are not necessarily chasing unicorns, that are looking at the broader opportunity. So that's, just my comment. I think the exit opportunities in B2C are fewer unless you really make it out as a bigger company, as an independently successful company. Do you agree with this, the comment that I just summarized?
Yeah, I think that's right. The most M&A happens at I would say 50 to 100. I think you said 50 to 60. I think that's the reality of it. That's where most companies are bought. And when we are lucky enough to get into a company that sells for $100 million, we high-five the entrepreneur and celebrate, and that's a win for sure. That's very difficult to grow a company from nothing and sell it for $100 million. I think that's an incredible task. So I don't really look at us as being in the business of hunting for unicorns. I do think we need one in order to be a very top performing fund.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say that we don't get excited when a company sells for $50 to $100 million. But I think you need a very small fund size in order for that to be the strategy that works. So we're just focused on finding great founders that are solving big problems, and the hope is that one of them goes on to be a great big company. But when one sells for $50 to $100 million, that is an amazing win for investors and for entrepreneurs. So I love when that happens, but it's not the focus of our strategy.
All right. Very good. Thank you for sharing your ideas on what you are doing at Collaborative Fund and what's interesting, what's exciting. Audience, thank you for listening. We will be back soon with another edition of the 1Mby1M podcast. In the meantime, you can come to the website and look at our free public roundtables, which are working sessions. You can bring your project and we will strategize and help you accelerate your path to success. See you soon.